No, so a clicker is just a conditioned reinforcer. So you could teach the clicker to mean the same thing that yes means for us, right? So yes is a conditioned reinforcer, a sound that's been conditioned to predict reward, and so it's a reward in and of itself, right? And so I certainly could use the clicker the way I use yes. I could use the clicker the way I use good. So some people use the clicker as a keep going signal. They still charge it, click, feed, click, feed, click, feed, click, feed, and then the dog sits, you click, and they have a separate release. So, right, so you could use clicker like good, you could use clicker like yes. Most people use clicker like yes. When you click, the dog gets to break off from the behavior to access a reward, and then you go back to work after that, right? So that's the way most people use it. But it depends on how you've conditioned it and how you're using it. The bridging behavior is totally different than that stuff, right? So a conditioned reinforcer is a reward, a conditioned reward, so that we can isolate behavior. Right there, that's what I wanted. Click, yes, whatever it is at the moment the dog does it, and it's for facilitating teaching and telling the dog that was the right behavior and rewarding them at the moment they do it, right? One of the values of a conditioned reinforcer is it allows me to reward the dog when I can't efficiently get the reward to the dog instantaneously when they do that, right? And so in a lot of behaviors, some behaviors it's easy to get the reward to the dog. I say sit, you're right in front of me, I feed you. There's no need for a marker there, right? Technically, or a conditioned reinforcer. It's easy to do. We use them because our dogs need to be conditioned to them, and we need to know how to use them well, right? We use markers on everything, or conditioned reinforcers on everything, not because it would be necessary, but because the dog needs to thoroughly understand them. Remember, we've talked about the difference between their conditioned release marker, what people sometimes call a terminal bridge, right? Or the keep going marker, and the dogs have to understand that difference. They have to have many hundreds of pairings so that their classical conditioning is fully intact, and then we have to be able to do it without thinking about it, right? How often do you say yes when you mean good, and good when you mean yes, and blah, 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 and sometimes you're doing it. So you have to practice so that it's seamless. You don't think about it anymore. You see the behavior you want, you mark the behavior, you reward the behavior. You're not thinking about it anymore, right? I see my dog do what I want, yes. Then I'm rewarding you, right? And I'm at a point where it's just second nature. You don't think, because you have to do it over and over again. So we use markers in lots of, or conditioned reinforcers, or clickers, or whatever you're using, in lots of places where they technically wouldn't be necessary to teach the behavior. In the finishing work, the markers have another use, which is what happens when the reward's not there anymore. It's not in sight. It's not, you can't have it right there ready to give it to the dog, right? And so now my markers allow me to say, that's it right there, and then get the reward out afterwards, right? And I don't have to be in a rush anymore to get the reward, which allows me remote rewards, rewards that are hidden, all kinds of other things like that. Yes, yeah, it's the bridge between the behavior and the reward event, right? So they call them bridging behaviors. So the same way that some people call a conditioned, the behaviorists frequently call a conditioned reinforcer, another term for it is a bridge, right? I mentioned that. So this gets confusing, right? Because you're using bridge in two separate ways. A bridge is another word for a conditioned reinforcer or a marker or a secondary reinforcer, right? A bridge is a sound, a neutral, typically a sound, it wouldn't have to be, but a sound typically for us that is the bridge between the behavior and the production of the reward, right? So that's a marker conditioned reinforcer. And so we use the term bridge there too. Bridging behaviors are a bridge as well. They're a bridge between the behavior you want and the reward event, right?
They're always terminal then.
They're always terminal. After that, the dog does it, and they don't have to be, technically, right? You wouldn't have to. Some people will do it, have the dog touch, and then keep healing, and then touch, and then follow it with a release after the touch. But the dog always has to do it, right? So some people will use it to kind of...
Pick one. Either it's always terminal or...
Yeah, I usually make mine always terminal, but there are people that don't. The people that will have the dog do it and then keep going, and then have the dog do it sometimes and then release them out to break out of the healing to reward. Both methodologies work. The people that advocate for having the dog keep doing it, I'll explain it in a little bit because I'm going to get to reward schedules in a second. Yeah?